All right. Councilmember Mark Squilla, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy, Larry. Always a pleasure.
I appreciate it. So the big question on everybody's mind right now, as it has been for a while, where are we with the 76ers arena? Where does that stand right now?
Well, right now, I mean, we're still waiting for these studies to be released. Supposedly, they've been translated, they're completed, and it's just a matter of time before the administration puts them out. We're waiting to be briefed. We're hearing early next week we'll be briefed about these studies. Then have those studies put out to the public. I have committed that once the studies and the legislation is done, I would share the legislation with the community stakeholders and, have them at least review them 30 days before introduction of any type of legislation if this project is going to move forward. So we're just hoping and waiting right now for the information from the studies to see what the challenges are, if these challenges can be mitigated through legislation or a community benefits agreement. And if that's the case, then we would introduce legislation within 30 days or not before 30 days of when it is being shown.
Is there anything that would be a deal breaker for you that you would look at and say, well, we can't move forward if this is in place?
Yeah, I think all along, I mean, we've been hearing from the communities what the challenges are. A lot of the stakeholders, you talk about congestion, you talk about traffic, you talk about parking, you talk about small business, right? You talk about even gentrification or increase in real estate values. We know right now, even this year, there's been a major increase in the Chinatown area for assessments, right? What can we as a city do to make sure any project that we put in these areas do not sort of even further increase the real estate values in those areas, so to sort of gentrify that area or keep people from being able to stay in the community that they lived in all their lives. But then again, is you're looking at not only the affordability of the area, if you're looking at the congestion, the traffic, how that would affect small businesses. We talk to small businesses, whether it's in the Chinatown area and or East Market Street, right? You have the Midtown Village, which is just on the other side of Market Street. Can we make sure that the increase in volume of pedestrians doesn't offset by people not being able to get there? And are those people going to frequent these small businesses? How do we get them to use them if they're there? So I think a lot of things comes into place. It's also congestion. You deal with Jefferson Hospital to make sure that traffic could flow during emergency situations and things like that. We have the convention center there. You have Reading Terminal. You have a lot of stakeholders that have, specific issues. And we got to make sure that these issues are dealt with in any legislation that we have or in a community benefits agreement that would be codified within the legislation, and we'd be able to add it to the legislation so that it would be part of the law. And if we weren't able to do that, I would say it'd be hard to move forward with any legislation to not address those issues and concerns.
And you feel that, so with the briefing coming up next week, that maybe this fall, maybe you would see legislation or a decision one way or the other?
I would say we'll probably have a decision whether to move forward or not, in the fall. But, I don't know if that complete decision of whether it's approved or not would be completed by the end of the year. I'm not sure of the timeline yet, because it all depends on when the legislation is introduced, right? You have to have public hearings, and then you have to have votes on by council, and then also support of the administration or the mayor. But I do believe in the fall we will have a decision on whether to try to introduce legislation or not.
Okay. As a member of the Kensington Caucus, are you encouraged by what you've been seeing over the last 8 months?
What I see now is hope. People have been living in conditions and challenges in their neighborhoods for quite some time, and over the last 4 years or so, it has continually gotten worse. And what I'm hearing from people is that even though you can't, turn a large ship in a short period of time, and so you're not going to see from one day have this, total conglomerate of people on the street, a lot of addiction use and a lot of quality of life issues associated with that. Be able to turn that in 1 week and say, now it's gone, right? So the city has done some initiatives, but the plan takes a little more time to be put in place. The mayor has, asked for $100 million of resources to set up facilities so that people can get help, make sure we have enough beds and services available for any folks who need it, make sure there's shelters available, housing available, and all these things take a little bit of time to get up and running. But I think what I'm hearing now is hope from the people who live in that community, knowing that this administration is making it a priority, taking the quality of life issue seriously, even addressing some of the criminal activity that's been happening that was sort of ignored for many years. And they're starting to see that ramp up. And now when you do see that, now that causes sometimes some other issues, right? Sometimes the people move into other communities, or sometimes you have unintended consequences on addressing maybe a drug gang that's locked into a certain corner. And when you sometimes go and dismantle that, sometimes another group tries to come in, and then you have some other additional violence. So I think you may see even an uptick in some of these things happening as the plan starts to work its way through a progress. But I think it may get a little bit worse before it gets better. But I do see that hope, and I do see that people are really excited about at least the opportunity of putting a plan in place to address their needs.
What are some of the other things you're looking forward to in this upcoming fall session, which begins in 2 weeks, believe it or not?
Yeah, I mean, we start really early, right after Labor Day.
Hmm.
So it's exciting to get back, and and it's not only the quality of life and the crime issues that we're having. I don't know if you've been hearing about it, but we have, about the assessments that have been
Yes.
uh, given from OPA, Office of Property Assessment, to the residents. And so the challenges are, why have the assessments increased so much in certain areas? How do we look at that? What protections do we put in place? We have some already with homestead. We increased homestead from 80,000 to 100,000. So if you live in a home, you be eligible for $100,000 off your assessed value. So if your house is worth 200,000, you would pay taxes on 100,000 and not the full 200,000. But that's just one thing. We have loop, we have senior freeze. We now introduced this year a new low income freeze for folks who are eligible. We're able to freeze their taxes because of their low income. But we also need to understand OPA and why we're seeing large increases of 20, 30, 50, 100% in 1 year, right? That's something we really have to address. I introduced the legislation previously. It's called um, um, tolling legislation, where if somebody appeals their assessment, they pay last year's taxes until a decision is made. We're looking to do that again. I'm looking to reintroduce something that they said was illegal, which is a cap on increases in assessment. I don't see why, if we're doing assessments properly, that you can increase 50, 60, 100% in a year. It doesn't make any sense. And I think we need to be able to cap that at a certain percentage. And I know 10% sounds high, but 10% will be a lot better than 50% and 100%. And maybe we can negotiate from 5% to 10%. I don't know. But we need to put a cap on there, and we'll probably get pushback from the law department and the uniformity clause. And maybe we need help from the state. Maybe we need a state authorizing legislation to do this. And we need to actively look at that also, because we have to protect the residents. And if OPA isn't doing their job, we got to do what we need to do.
Mhm.
If they're not doing their job properly, we need to put more protections in place for the residents of the city of Philadelphia.
Okay. And that's one of our big pushes right now, is letting people know about the programs and things and how to appeal. That's what we've been spending the last month on.
Appealing is important, but
Yeah.
also there's some people who don't have homestead yet, right?
Right.
That's $100,000 off your assessment. So you're saving almost $1,400 right there. If you have homestead. And there's people who live in their homes and still do not have that. There's seniors who never applied for the senior freeze,
Hmm.
right? And so, and some people may be eligible for Loop or some other programs that are out there, don't know. Always reach out and check and see what you may be eligible for. And you may be eligible for more than one or two programs. And, we could help lay that out. Our office or the city of Philadelphia could help lay that out, which we would think, will be better for you, what program's best for you during this time, and longevity wise, because with, whether it's the abatement or some of these other safeguards, you only could have one. Sometimes you can't have more than one of these safeguards at a time. And so, hopefully the people know what's available to them, and we have to make sure if they don't know that we get that information out to them.
Right. A question we've been getting a lot lately. What is it the average day for a council member? What does that look like for you?
Well, obviously, every day, including weekends, is, you're working for the constituents. Our job is that we work for the taxpayers of our district and the city of Philadelphia. So we usually start off, and I usually try to get a morning meeting in before coming into City Hall. And then we start City Hall usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock with meetings, go throughout the day there. And then after that day of meetings that we have, whether it's working on legislation or just having independent meetings with some community members or people who have concerns in their area, or people who are coming in to look to do something in the city, whether it's open up a new business, have a development, so forth and so on. And our schedules are full throughout that day. And then after that day, we go out to then the community meeting. So starting usually around 6:30 to somewhere around 9, we have community meetings that we go to and community events. So we try to get at least maybe once every quarter to get to one of these community meetings throughout the district. And we do it by invitation. If they don't want us to go, we're not looking for more things to do. But, all these RCOs, registered community organizations, have monthly meetings. So a lot of times there's a lot of concerns. If nothing's basically going on in one area, they might not ask you to go. Nothing's really happening there. We also meet with our police districts and our the PSAs. They have meetings throughout the area. Either I'll go or somebody from my office could go if I can't go into these PSA meetings that are, deal with, issues with public safety in that particular area. And then the community events at night, people have, whether it's a park event, we have plenty of friends of parks or advisory councils for our parks and recs. And, they work with us through activities grants to throw these events for people in the community. And we get invited to them to stop at those events to just, show up that we support what they're doing, because these residents and these organizations do a lot for the city of Philadelphia. For a little bit of resources they get from our office, they really, are able to engage. They program some of our parks and recs. They have events for our parks and playgrounds. And so it's always important to show them that we appreciate what they're doing and to show up at those things.
One of the things we hear from residents of the first district, and this isn't to say anything about any other district, but we always hear first district does really well on services for people, constituent requests and things like that. How much of your time is spent dealing with constituent services?
Well, I have a staff of people in City Hall. It's every day, 8 hours a day of people calling in or emailing, whether it's an L&I concern, whether it's a pothole, it could be an inlet or a sewer that's clogged, it could be a street light. That's all day. Constituent service also deals with, quality of life issues, right? Unhoused people, homeless, people in addiction, crime, public safety, as far as, recently we had a bunch of tires and wheels being stolen from vehicles. We had catalytic converters a year back. And so, we have to deal with them and then work with our departments or the police department or whoever we think is necessary in order to address that issue and make sure that at least when the constituent reaches out, we get back to them, maybe not with an answer right away, but we're working on it, or connect them to a department who could work with them to get that done. I think it's very important if somebody reaches out, and my district is very diverse. So I'll go from, lower South Philly up to a lot of big immigrant area in South Philadelphia, up through Center City, up all the way to Kensington, Northern Liberty, Port Richmond, Fitchtown areas, so Chinatown. And so everybody has different needs. And what I first said was, if somebody calls you and said, hey, they forgot our trash, they didn't pick it up. I mean, I don't want somebody saying, well, do you know what they're dealing with in Kensington? Somebody just got shot. I want you to say, we'll address that. We'll call over to sanitation. We'll make sure it gets picked up, right? Then the same way, if I have a drug dealer on my corner, or I just had a serious incident on my corner, that all gets the same attention, and making sure that we're addressing those issues, but also responding to them in a reasonable time so that those folks know that we do work for them, right? And it's important to understand when you're an elected official, and even everybody on my staff, we're paid from taxpayer dollars. And so you know, to try to judge somebody when they call in, they're calling in because they tried everything they can and they don't know how to fix it. And so it's up to us to try to address that. And even if sometimes people get a little upset on the phone or in the email and, say some things, and I always say, put that to the side. What is the problem? Let's try to address the problem and work on trying to resolve it. Let's get a resolution or a solution in place. And sometimes we can't do things and people get upset because it's not the solution or resolution that they want. But they what they can say is they might not like the end result or the answer, but they can't say that we didn't try and work through a process to get them what they needed.
All right, I'd like to bring in Denise Clay Murray here on Philadelphia Hall Monitor.
Hi, Councilman. How are you?
Hey, Denise, how are you?
I'm good. I'm coming to you from Chicago, where the Democratic National Convention just finished up. And there's a question I've been asking all of your fellow council members, because I've bumped into a bunch of them here. And it kind of relates to, the work that you do with the Kensington Caucus. Um, as you know, Pennsylvania is once again being asked to save the republic. You know, the number of people that came through the caucus breakfasts was like an all-star team of Democrats just asking, please get out to vote, please get out to vote. And that's important. But, since Pennsylvania, is often asked to save the republic, I believe we should get something for our trouble. Um, what would you like to see Philadelphia in particular and Pennsylvania overall get from a Harris Walz administration if they win?
Well, I want to say I agree with you 100%. Pennsylvania, to me, whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to win the election. And I think it's important because in Philadelphia comes out to vote and has large numbers. The possibility of a Harris Walz administration is very likely. If we don't come out to vote, or there's lower turnout in Philadelphia, then it possibly could go the other way. And Pennsylvania is always purple. I know people don't like that idea, but in the sense that we are needed, right? And you see both parties in Pennsylvania right now constantly in here asking us to help. And I think, what you're saying is very important. Yeah, we're helping and we'll do everything we can to make this happen. But I see a way where infrastructure dollars and dollars from the feds is very important to the city of Philadelphia. We have, whether it's for money that we could get for a open air park space or money that we could get to build out our ports, right? This is really important for us. We talk about roads, we talk about highway safety, we talk about these other things. Then we have federal mandates that come without any dollars. And one of them was to, make sure we recreate all our handicap ramps throughout the city of Philadelphia, right? But we're using city of Philadelphia dollars in order to do that. That was a mandate from the federal government. Not that we don't want to do it, but it would be nice to have some additional resources to help us do that, because we got to use our tax dollars in order for that to happen. I think that infrastructure, I think job creation dollars, and I think money to help with affordable housing is probably the top three things that we could ask for from the administration. And I think they should be more than willing to provide that to us. And we have great opportunity on our port. I don't know if you're familiar with our port, but it's been getting a lot of work lately. And just to maintain those jobs down there, we need some new cranes. We need to create a larger berth for new ships. And you're talking about creating jobs. You're talking about violence prevention. That's all part of it, right? Because you have jobs, family sustaining wage jobs down there where people don't need a college degree, right? They could even be returning citizens. They could be people without have a struggle in their life, or maybe had a past and maybe had a felony charge, but you could still work in these jobs and you could create a family sustaining atmosphere where people could sustain themselves through jobs like this. So I think it's really important for us to push that envelope as listen, we're going to help to do this anyway, right? And we're going to make sure, but I think there should be, it's not a quid pro quo, but I look at it as a community benefits agreement, just like we do with developments and other things, right? We help you, and because of us, you are actually in your position to help us. And I think we have to make that known. Our leaders have to make that known. Our governor and our mayor have to also make that known. And together, I mean, we're not going to say, if you don't do this, we're not helping you, right? I mean, because then it sounds, I mean, some people may feel that way, but I think that it's, you know, we help you, you help us, we work together. And as a team, you know, we could both make this happen. And so I agree with you, though. There should be, anytime we do developments in the city, and even in my district, we have what is called community benefits agreement, whether it's installing lights around a neighborhood, whether it's adding security, whether it's putting money into a local playground or park, right? And that, because of some of the negative impacts that we have, we create this benefit where the developer or whoever's doing that project, you know, adds certain things to that specific area. And I think it's sort of the same concept. And we as a city need that, because we could grow our base and actually grow jobs and make it safer and cleaner for the city of Philadelphia with that additional help from the feds.
Okay, now, since I've been here, I went to Wrigleyville, which is where Wrigley Field is. And Wrigleyville is not just Wrigley Field, it's restaurants and shops and apartment buildings and all sorts of stuff. And one of the folks I was with, who was a Philadelphian, he was like, well, you know, if the Sixers could do something like this, you know, this would be great. Would that be, you know, is that something they've approached you with, like starting like a Sixerville, or is it just the stadium?
Well, if you noticed throughout the development now of all new arenas and stadiums, if you see, the mindset is to build up. And the funny part is Wrigley Field is one of the oldest, right? And you see it's right in the middle of downtown because most of the people lived in those areas. That's where you wanted to have them. But since cars and all sort of made people move further away, and then they put these stadiums in different places, they were in sort of islands of their own, with just surrounded by parking lots. The new mindset, if you look at all the new arenas that are being built throughout the country, is to put them in a more dense populated area, to be able to build, to use that as an economic driver to then build additional restaurants, retail, apartment building, and even more housing. If you looked at what Comcast is looking to do, even around that sports complex, is they want to add something like that. They want to build a whole new infrastructure there, right? So the Sixers, as part of their plan, would partner with Macerich, who is part of the mall ownership, with a parcel that they would buy. And Macerich owns property not only in the mall, but also on the south side of Market Street. So, you know, they would then be able to have access to build apartment buildings, mixed-use buildings with additional retail or commercial space, with restaurants, bars, taverns, and things like that. So that is part of their long-term goal. But even when you're saying that, we still have to look at what are the impacts, right? Because if you can't mitigate the impacts of just an arena, anytime you build there, anytime there's additional developments, whether it's more restaurants and bars, it brings more people in the area, more congestion in the area, and things like that. We have to be able to make sure we can mitigate all of those things. And what it does is it forces people to go to these events and places without using cars, right? You only have so much parking. People then take public transportation. If you're in Chicago and you're going to Wrigley Field, you know, if you're driving, it's going to be impossible to get there. So what do? You look at the best way to take public transportation and go there. Now, the mindset in Philly here is a little different. Everybody always drives. But if it's not feasible for you to get there by driving, you got to find alternative ways to get there. And I think that's what the 676 Development Corp is saying, is that more people will take public transportation, walk. You know, you would have Uber drop-offs and things like that in areas not real close to the arena, but other areas. So therefore, people could then frequent these small businesses, restaurants, and bars, and then stay a little longer afterwards, because it takes you a little time to get out, and also help the economy that way. So yes, that is part of their goal. But you know, we have to get past the initial part of the arena itself and the impacts of the arena. And that's why it was important to do these studies. And the studies are going to be released shortly. I'm hearing all the translation is done. So I think these studies will also tell us what are the challenges. And it's up to us to find ways to mitigate those challenges through legislation or a community benefits agreement. And then if we can't, then you can't move forward. But if you can, then you do.
Okay, in terms of assessments, I think that part of the reason why people were so shocked at their assessment, in addition to how high some of the taxes went up with some of these, is because of how often they're assessed. They feel like this assessment just came out of nowhere. Should we do more frequent assessments? And is there any kind of legislation that says how often you're supposed to do assessments?
By law, assessments have to be done every year.
Mhm.
By law. Last year, they did not do assessments, and it was an agreement between, I guess, the administration and OPA, which I'm sure if it was challenged, people would have won the challenge. But who's going to challenge if somebody don't do an assessment and doesn't raise your taxes, right? But what happens when they don't do that assessment is the following year, now you have 2 years worth of assessments. And so the increase is there. It should be mandated that assessments are done every year. It is mandated, and we should not be able to waive that mandate for any reason. So that's one thing. The other thing is, we've been arguing this for the last 12, 13 years since I've been on council. And, assessments have to be accurate. It's supposed to be actual value. The AVI was actual value initiative, which means what you could sell your property for. And, OPA will sometimes say that, oh, well, you were getting a break for 20 years and we just didn't assess it right then. Well, that's not the resident's fault that you didn't assess it right then, right? It's up to us to be able to say, we should not have increases of 50, 75, 100% in one assessment cycle, ever, right? Maybe the first time you did it, since it was the first time we did AVI, and that's what they said, and this was the challenges. And the reason why I voted against AVI, I didn't think we were ready then, back in 2013, because I thought it took too long for OPA to explain how they do their assessment process. And they were getting this CAMA system in that was supposed to make it more streamlined. But we see that this is a complicated city. There's a whole different type of properties throughout the city of Philadelphia. There's different neighborhoods and different things to take into account. So we have to make sure that the assessments are accurate. And I'm still not positive they are, even though when they get their assessment from the state, they say they fall within the range of that, of accuracy. But if you're accurate, you would never have to raise somebody's assessment 50, 75, 80%. It would never happen if you were accurate in the beginning. So, I think the problem was, if you remember, even before I was in office, there was, I don't know if it was Committee of 70, but it was, good government movement to take political influence out of the assessment process, right? To have it split between OPA and BRT. They weren't going to be the same anymore. They would be two different entities. OPA is Office Property Assessment. BRT is the Board of Revision of Taxes, who you appeal to. And therefore, there would be no political influence in that process. You have professionals doing it. The problem is, once you take politics out of it, when there's a problem, everybody wants us to fix it, and we don't have authority over OPA's assessment process, right? So, and again, I'm not saying good government is bad. I think there is a process where you should have the professionals do their things, but there still should be some ability for the elected officials to weigh in on how things are done. And so what we're left to do is put in safeguards, right? We've done a lot of them. You saw Homestead, you saw Loop, you saw Senior Freeze, now you see Low Income Freeze. You're going to see tolling, which is going to be able to make you appeal and pay last year's taxes. But now we're going to look to try to do a cap. So we're trying to do things because we're not involved in that process, but it makes us do it on the back end. And so we're going to continue to fight for our residents and for the OPA to be able to do proper assessments. But right now, our goal is to put protections in place, because we believe some of these, raises that we've seen are just astronomical and really should not happen. And so they're the challenges, though, we face as the legislative body.
Now, you mentioned that you've been working pretty hard throughout the summer. And despite the fact that, folks sometimes think that you all just, take the summer off. Do you get a summer vacation? And what does a summer vacation look like for Mark Squilla?
Yes, I actually, last week, I had a week down in Wildwood, down the shore. Every year I usually throw a fundraiser down in Wildwood, and then I take that week off. And so unfortunately though, when I take that week off and I was down the shore for the whole week, I didn't come up, even though there was a possibility I had to. You know, you still do emails and you're still returning calls, and, you know, people are calling the office. My office is still open. So, you know, I took a full week off in the summer, and it was like August 9th to the 18th. I was down in Wildwood.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today, council member. I'm going to give you back to Larry McGlynn, and you're still listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And Councilmember Squilla, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thank you. And I think you guys do a great job. Keep up the great work, and keep getting that information out there to help our residents of the city of Philadelphia. Take care. Have a great day.
You too, Councilman. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.